Wednesday, the Wilberforce Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Cuthbert B. Alexis, also known as Baker and Cutty, of Richmond, St. Andrew, passed away on Friday, 24th March 2023, at the age of 82. He was the husband of Nellis Rush Alexis, father of Anthony Alexis, stepfather of Cliff, Roderick and Hazel Ann Rush, adopted father of Billy Reed and Eleanor Fuller in the UK, and Rachel Robertson in the USA, brother of Lyris Buckmeyer, Helen, Jean, Joan, Augustine, Rudolph, Floyd, and Albert Alexis, brother-in-law of Ruth Alexis, Dina Whiteman, Clifford, Kenrick, and Roy Robertson, nephew of Walwyn Alexis and Dennis Mason. Many nieces and nephews in Grenada, the USA, Canada, and the United Kingdom, including Jacqueline Alexis and Leroy Andrew. Many other close friends and relatives, including Hicklin and Sylvie Nayak, the Mason and Samuel families of Hermitage and Conference, Christine Joseph and family, Errol Robertson and the Robertson family, Angela John, Agnes Francis, Suzanne Scott and family, Asran Williams, Norris, Chrissy, June Naidu, and the Passard family in the USA, and friends and neighbors of Ladigue, Richmond, De Blando, Plaisance, Post Royal, Walker, and in Canada, the United Kingdom, and the USA. The funeral of the late Cuthbert B. Alexis, also known as Baker and Cutty, of Richmond, St. Andrew, will take place on Thursday, April 13th at 10 a.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. Andrew the Apostle R.C. Church, Grenville, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Fidelis Bethel Ross, also known as Auntie Christine, of Petite Martinique, who resided at Frequenté St. George, passed away on Thursday, 23rd March 2023, at the age of 78, left to mourn her immediate family, Christopher Ross, Doctors Nisha and Ronnie Ross, and Neil Ross, siblings including Agnes Bethel and Bernadette Bethel in the USA, and Glennis Bethel in Petite Martinique. Many nieces and nephews including Nephon Bethel and Sherman Bethel. Caregivers Sarana and Samantha Newton. Other relatives and friends including Lensley Lloyd, Shireen Harris, Mrs. Samuel, and members of the Cursilio movement, and members of the public service, and friends and neighbors of Petite Martinique and Frequenté St. George. The funeral of the late Fidelis Bethel Ross, also known as Auntie Christine of Petite Martinique, who resided at Frequenté St. George, will take place on Thursday, April 13th at 1:30 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Blessed Sacrament R.C. Church, Grandon, St. George, and interment will be at the Grandon Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Ricky Elvis Alexander, also known as Chancers of Malmount St. David, passed away on Saturday, 11th March 2023, at the age of 55. He was the son of Imelda James, also known as Laurel Lalji, residing in the USA, brother of Dexter in Grenada, Shane, Jr., Ronald, also known as Wire, Kimron, and Kendall James, all in the USA, sister Valerie Frank in Grenada, uncle of Dellen St. Louis in the US, Kelson Alexander, Kim Frank, and Lisa Frank, nephew of George Lalji, Martha Williams, also known as Meralda Williams, and Maudlin Lalji, both in the USA, brother-in-law of Gemma Alexander, close friend of Marilyn in Canada. Many cousins, other relatives and friends including Janelle, Jesslyn Pear, teacher Robbie George and family, the Andrew family of Malmount, the Lalji family of St. David and St. Andrew. Special thanks to the doctors and nurses of the male surgical ward at the General Hospital, and friends and relatives of Malmount and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Ricky Elvis Alexander, also known as Chancers of Malmount St. David, will take place on Friday, 14th April at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. David R.C. Church, and interment will be at the St. David Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Renee Estelle Norvet Pilgrim of Grenville St. Andrew, former employee of the Grenada Cooperative Bank, died on March 9, 2023, at the age of 29. left to mourn her parents Selma and Dennis Pilgrim, siblings Risha, Monique, Kendra, and Bert, close friend Kofi Blackburn, aunts Frances, Hermione and Claudia Rubin, Nellie, Christy, Rena and Jenny, uncles Jefferson Rubin, Dexter and Daniel, niece and nephews Brianna, Vashon and Bertwan, many cousins including Janil, Sheena, Celine, Enoch, Janae, Kathy, Curl, Carrie, Rhonda, Ramonda, the Batiste family of Birchgrove, the Rubin family of St. James, and others in Grenada and abroad too numerous to mention. Godparents John Joseph and Catherine Harford, friends Shamika Williams, Renatha, Kendall, Anne Ogilvy and family, and Lydia Bowen, Josephine Maguire and family, Dr. Kerry Ann Renault, Dwight Maguire, Hazel Ann Robinson and family of Sataz, Christine Thomas, the management and staff of the Grenada Cooperative Bank, the priest and parishioners of the St. Andrew's Anglican Community, Reverend Roland Mark, doctors and nurses of the Female Medical Ward at the General Hospital, Rainbow City Toastmasters Club, and Toastmasters Clubs in Grenada and Carriacou, the graduating class of 2011 at the St. Andrew's Anglican Secondary School, other teachers, other relatives, friends, acquaintances, and mourners too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Renee Estelle Norvette Pilgrim of Grenville St. Andrew will take place on Monday 17th April at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. Andrew the Apostle R.C. Church according to Anglican rites, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Jonathan Richards of Edward Street, Guelph, St. John, passed away on Tuesday the 21st of March at the age of 28. Left to mourn are his parents Wendy Richards in Grenada and Clive Romaine in the U.S., adoptive parents Karen Richards and Anthony Robertson, close companion Petal Hosford in the UK, sisters Antonia, Rosaria and Brittany Richards, brothers O'Shane, Romeo, Rommel, Bradley Richards and Garth Thomas, nephew Secron Richards, godparents Denise in the US and Samantha, grandmother Claire Romaine, aunts Shirley Ann in the US and Jenny, Sally Ann in the UK and Lynthia Phillip, Claudine and Carla Romaine in the US, uncles Sal Richards and Joe Romaine in the US, cousins Cody, Troy, Zakim, Swan, Wilma, Ann, Wilbert, Sky, and many other relatives, Cleona Smith and family, Madonna Joseph and family, June Thomas and family, the Romaine family of Victoria, Miss Agatha Clark and family, the Wilson family from Carriacou, friends Lyrene, other relatives and friends too numerous to mention. The funeral for the late Jonathan Richards of Edward Street, Guelph, St. John, will be on Tuesday the 18th of April at 1:30. The funeral service will be at the St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church, Guelph, St. John. Interment will be at the Douglaston Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Abigail Mary Sandy, née Mitchell, of the Villa St. George's, died on Monday the 20th of March at the age of 84. She was the mother of Ian Sandy, Dr. Betty Ann Sandy Pivot, Fiona Michelle Sandy, grandmother of Tristan Pivot, Aidan Pivot, Gabrielle Sandy, and Abriella Sandy, mother-in-law of Brian Pivot and Dr. Nadia Francis Sandy, sister of Winston Macaulay, sister-in-law of Rita Macaulay, aunt of Gary Macaulay, George Macaulay, Mark Macaulay, and Randy Macaulay, all residing in Canada, aunt-in-law of Colin Sandy, cousin of Oliver Mitchell and family, Marilyn Joseph and family, Ferren Lowe and family, the Pascal family residing in Canada and in Barbados. Other relatives and friends, including Grace Ronan, the Cox family of Belmont, the Pivot and Francis families of St. Paul's, Brenda Peters, Brenda Fletcher, Histelina Seeley, Margaret Spencer, Phyllis Gomes, Eunice Sandy David, and the Sandy family of Happy Hill. Her caretakers Jane Phillip, Wendy Thomas, and the staff of Connection Care at Home Agency, the Anglican community of St. George, and Dr. Emma Harry Thompson. The funeral service for the late Abigail Sandy of the Villa St. George's will take place on Wednesday the 19th of April at 12 noon. The funeral service will be at the St. George's Anglican Church, Church Street, St. George's. Interment will be at the St. George's Center Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Andre Dexter Johnson, also known as Swanboy of Mary Ann St. George, passed away on Sunday the 9th of April at the age of 56. The funeral arrangements for the late Andre Dexter Johnson, also known as Swanboy of Mary Ann St. George, will be given on a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Clinton Cosmos Alexander of Parade and Laborie St. George, who resided in the United States of America, died on Sunday the 9th of April in the United States at the age of 88. Funeral arrangements for the late Clinton Cosmos Alexander will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Talik Wilfana Laborde, also known as Wendy and Shortstuff of Trinidad, who resided in Montoux, St. George, died on Tuesday the 11th of April at the age of 33. We'll have funeral arrangements for the late Talik Wilfana Laborde of Trinidad, who resided in Montoux, St. George, in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Nathaniel Fitzroy Graves of Montmorut St. George died on Monday 10th April 2023 at the age of 75. The funeral arrangements for the late Nathaniel Fitzroy Graves of Montmorut St. George will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Abraham Rasher, also known as Satan of Grove St. John, passed away on Friday 7th April 2023 at the age of 71. The funeral arrangements for the late Abraham Rasher, also known as Satan of Grove St. John, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home. Jadine Emmons Bartholomew of Happy Hill, who resided at Montparnasse St. George, owner of J&J Printers, passed away on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023, at the age of 36. The funeral arrangements for the late Jadine Emmons Bartholomew of Happy Hill, who resided at Montparnasse St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Samuel Everard Holder of Marigot St. John passed away on Friday 24th March 2023 at the age of 94. The funeral arrangements for the late Samuel Everard Holder of Marigot St. John will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home. Eric George Williams of Woburn, who resided at River Road Housing Scheme, passed away on Saturday 1st April 2023 at the age of 84. The funeral arrangements for the late Eric George Williams of Woburn, who resided at River Road Housing Scheme, St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home. Madge Carmen Narayan, also known as Clary of Industry St. Mark, who resided at Montoux, St. George, passed away on Monday 27th March 2023 at the age of 54. The funeral arrangements for the late Madge Carmen Narayan, also known as Clary of Industry St. Mark, who resided at Montoux, St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. David Augustine Charles, also known as Cokes and Elliot, of Mamacan St. Andrew, passed away on Thursday, 23rd March 2023, at the age of 71. The funeral arrangements for the late David Augustine Charles, also known as Cokes and Elliot, of Mamacan St. Andrew, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacwa Brothers Funeral Home.
Gracelyn Samuel, also known as Samuel, Nursey, and Graceau of Black Bay St. John, passed away on Tuesday, 28 March, at the age of 60. The funeral arrangements of the late Gracelyn Samuel, also known as Samuel, Nursey, and Graceau of Black Bay St. John, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacwa Brothers Funeral Home.
Darren Tyrrell Jude Kurt Etchell, also known as D Block, of Grand Mole St. George, who resided in Wallaceburg and Walpole Island, Ontario, Canada, transitioned on Sunday, 3rd April 2022, at the age of 33. The memorial service for the late Darren Tyrrell Jude Kurt Etchell, also known as D Block, of Grand Mole St. George, who resided in Wallaceburg and Walpole Island, Ontario, Canada, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Lincoln Williams, also known as Boots and Linky, of Hermitage St. Patrick, who resided at Grand Arms St. George, passed away on Saturday, 25th March 2023, at the age of 76. The funeral arrangements for the late Lincoln Williams, also known as Boots and Linky, of Hermitage St. Patrick, who resided at Grand Arms St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacwa Brothers Funeral Home. Magdalene Claire Charles, also known as Tanty Claire of Bellevue St. George, a well-known market vendor, died on Sunday 26th March 2023 at the age of 82. The funeral arrangements for the late Magdalene Claire Charles, also known as Tanty Claire, of Bellevue St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Dane Bartholomew Hayes, also known as Ashton, of Caliste St. George, passed away on Saturday, 25th March 2023, at the age of 60. The funeral arrangements for the late Dane Bartholomew Hayes, also known as Ashton, of Caliste St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Carl Wilson of Springs, who resided at Point Celine St. George, proprietor of Point Celine Hotel or Fox Inn, passed away on Tuesday, 21st March 2023, at the age of 77. The funeral arrangements for the late Carl Wilson of Springs, who resided at Point Celine St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacwa Brothers Funeral Home.
The management and staff of MTV extend deepest condolences to those of you whose loved ones have passed on. Thank you for watching.
On behalf of this entire network, our congregations, and I, Pastor Happy, we do send our deepest condolences to you and your family, even in this time that could be very painful, very challenging, very hard time of agony, bereavement. We're here to pray with you, to encourage you. You know, it could be a very painful time. A bishop lost his son, and he was crying, God, where are you? And he felt like he received this voice inwardly saying to him, you know, I am in the same place where I was when I lost my son. You know, God even went through this time, and we all go through this time, and sometimes it could be very hard, very challenging, but we pray that God will strengthen you. And I want to pray this prayer and scripture upon your life from Psalms 147, verse 3. It says that the Lord heals your brokenheartedness, and God bind up your wounds. That's our prayer. We know you're brokenhearted, but God will heal you. And Isaiah 41 verse 10 says, fear not. So this time, don't be afraid. We pray that fear will go from you. He says, I am with you. I will strengthen you. We pray that strength and that knowledge and revelation, knowing that God is with you. He says, I will help you. I will uphold you. He will hold you up. Sometimes people just collapse even in this time, but God will hold you up. He will strengthen you. And we pray 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 16 into your life. It says, now the Lord of peace himself give you peace always by all means. So we pray that God will give you peace always. He will strengthen you. He will be with you even in this time. You know, for the believer, we know to be absent in the body is to be present with the Lord. The Bible says that in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8. So when we leave our body as believers, we are with the Lord. And Jesus said to Martha in John chapter 11, verse 25, he says, I am the resurrection and life. He that believes in me, though he was dead, yet he shall live again. So there's life after death. And we pray that if you want to see your loved ones, hence Colossians chapter 1, verse 27 says, Christ in me, the hope of glory. So Christ is your hope to see your loved ones again. So today you can embrace him as your Lord, as your Savior. And we pray that God will help every one of you. The Bible also tells us, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. So we pray that God will give you peace, and as you embrace him today, you have everlasting life. You have hope, even in this life. And he continues to strengthen you every day as you go. Hold on to Jesus. Hold on to God. Cry out, pray, and he will strengthen you. So may God bless you. May God keep you. May God be gracious unto you. May God cause his face to shine upon you. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Love you.